So today I've been practicing It Ain't Necessarily So. I've taken it from the next half section. So I've split a section, as I said in the last video, into two parts, and this is the second part of it. And it starts out with those horrible double stops that I love so much. And basically the way I'm practicing those is just splitting them up. So taking the bottom note first, maybe taking it at a slower tempo and running through it with just the bottom note, maybe repeated 3 or so times, and then doing the same with the top note. Moving on through this section, it's quite, for me this section is quite odd because it doesn't really, well, this piece is quite jumbled up in a way I like to call it anyway, but this section particularly is just a lot of accidentals, a lot of shifting, and almost like this section open completely for your own interpretation. It's quite I was discussing it the other day with someone and they said they found it quite a comical piece, and I kind of never looked at it that way. I've just looked at it as a jazz piece, lots of slides, lots of shifts, but if you listen to it, it does, looking at it from a comical point of view, it is quite a comical piece. And this section kind of sums that part of listening up because it does sound very odd and disjointed. There are also a few accents as well in this section that are just on, odd notes, like you just wouldn't expect accents to be put there. So playing around with that and playing around with how I'm going to interpret it myself is quite interesting. And then we get this section where it's almost like a chromatic descending scale to begin with, and then it shifts a bit more as well. But basically it's the third line down of this section. We only have 3 lines in this bit, and it's a lot of accidentals, as I said before. It's accidentals being they're not in the key signature, and they can sound very out of place, but again, for the effect that the composer seems to be wanting to play around with, being comical, this fits in quite nicely with that theme. So doing this bit, it's a lot of repetitive practice, getting it in your head where your fingers are going next, because they're not expected notes. Like normally you can kind of listen to a piece and kind of guess where it's going if all the notes are diatonic, but since these are accidentals, you just don't know what to expect next, which I think is a nice touch. I'll play you what this section sounds like. So there's a bit more to be done on it. I want to kind of, experiment with where my direction of this section is. So where do I want the dynamics to go? What emotion do I want to convey? It's all very up to your own interpretation, this piece, and I'm very excited to find out where I want to go with it. Next practice, that's probably what I'll be experimenting with. So I'll be looking at this section again and kind of looking where I want to take the emotion and dynamics of this section, and then I'll be moving on to the allegro section through to tempo 1, which is only 2 lines, but it's one of the most intricate passages of the piece. So I'll explain how I practice that next time, but it is very complicated, and looking at it takes a lot of looking and not just playing, really, how I would describe the practice I do with this bit. But yeah, that's my practice for today. I'll be doing allegro next time. Thanks guys.